noted that the school year began with the difference between authority and authoritarianism, and I have a feeling that the rest of it will be just as clear. My homeroom teacher is Mr. Dodd. It has always been Mr. Dodd. I cannot remember a time when my homeroom teacher wasn't Mr. Dodd, and my homeroom teacher will always be Mr. Dodd, forever and ever, world without end. While the rest of us took unknowing summer sips of coffee and steamed milk, in Natasha's case, Mr. Dodd was apparently at some assertiveness training program. He droned on and on about it after stalking into the room and writing Mr. Dodd in all caps on the blackboard, even though homeroom has been the same kids with the same teacher year in and year out, world without end. The gist of his speech was that, thanks to assertiveness training, we couldn't chew gum anymore. He told us of his vision of a new homeroom, one with authority but not authoritarianism. I would have let it go, but he insisted we all look it up. He waited while we fumbled with our Websters. We knew he was waiting because he kept calling out, "I'm waiting!" Finally, Natasha stood up, brushed her hair from her eyes, and read out loud, "Authoritarianism, a doctrine favoring or marked by absolute and unquestioning obedience to authority. Authority, the power to command, determine, or judge." Then she looked at Mr. Dodd and sat down. No one ever stands up in class and recites like that, of course. But I suppose if I looked like Natasha, I'd stand up too. All the boys, Mr. Dodd included, gaped at Natasha for a minute, before the latest graduate of assertiveness training for homeroom and geography teacher said, "Does everyone understand what I mean?" Everybody thought, no, except for a sizable handful of homeroom kids who will never think anything, world without end, but only Natasha said it. I looked back and saw her take out an emery board that had a carved claw at either end. She didn't look at Mr. Dodd as she began to do her nails. Ever since Natasha and I read Cyrano de Bergerac and Hattie Lewis's freshman English class, she's done everything with panache. Later, this emery board will be very important in our story, so I introduce it now. Mr. Dodd cleared his throat. Nobody at assertiveness training had prepared him for Natasha Hyatt. Nobody ever would be prepared for her. He opened his mouth to say something, and the bell rang, and we all left. I caught up with Natasha and hugged her. "I don't know what I'd do without you." "I don't know what I'd do without me either," she said, batting her eyelashes. "That'll teach him to fool around with the dictionary. Tune in tomorrow for the difference between disciple and disciplinarian. Come on, it's time for chemistry." "I'm not doing chem," I said. "I've got biology." "With who?" "Carr." "Carr! That dreamboat! Not doing chem, she says." Natasha looked around the crowded hallway, narrating. Few kids looked up. Everyone was used to Natasha going on about something, and we were all zombies this early in the morning anyway. "Not doing chem when all the while she gets biology with Carr. That's more chem than I'll ever have. I've got that four-eyed man with a toupee." "So when will I see you?" I started to pull out my schedule to compare, but Natasha was suddenly swept away by a thick-necked rush of football players who apparently let nothing stand in their path on their quest for punctuality. For a minute it felt like a Hollywood prison camp movie, where the husband and wife are dragged off to different trains, though I must admit Natasha didn't look too dismayed at being caught in the stampede. "Easy, boys," I heard her call, and I looked down at my computerized card to see where to go next. Funny how one's eyes are bleary in the mornings. Perhaps it has all been edited for your amusement and to protect the innocent, if any. This is the first year they've included first names on our schedules, and we will never let Lawrence forget it. Looks like I'm alone in math. None of my friends. Mr. Baker seems fine. We have to cover our books. Even Hattie Lewis had very little to say about American poetry, except that we have to cover our books which contain it. Hattie Lewis, who opened my eyes to books and the world, to whom I owe the very act of writing in a journal, had little to say except that we have to cover our books. It says something about school that the first thing our mentors tell us is to cover up tomes of knowledge with recycled paper bags. Or maybe it doesn't. I only had time for half a cup of coffee this morning, and the coffee available here where I am editing this is extremely bitter, like the author/editor herself. At least in English I have friends. Kate Gordon, the Queen Bee, was in there, and so was Jennifer Rose Milton, whose name is so beautiful I must always write it out completely. Jennifer Rose Milton. Her mother is Joanne Milton, the beautiful French teacher who has written a cookbook of all the recipes contained in Proust. To give you an idea of how beautiful Jennifer Rose Milton is, she can call her mother Maman, and no one minds. Gabriel was there too, although he might have to transfer out to make his schedule work. Gabriel Gallen is the kindest boy in the world, and somehow the San Francisco Unified School District computer system has figured that out and likes to torture him. Today he will attend 3 English classes and 4 gym classes, even though he's a senior and isn't supposed to have gym at all. Jennifer Rose Milton came in late and sat far away from me, but Kate sat right next to me and exchanged heaven help us glances about book covering for a full 40 minutes. As the bell rang, we compared schedules and learned that we have only English together. Jennifer Rose Milton glided toward us and hugged us all. Gabriel first, then Kate, then me. "I wish I could talk," she said, "but I must run. Maman says the first meeting of the Grand Opera Breakfast Club is tomorrow, so see you then, if not before." She flew out, followed by Gabriel, who was hoping to catch our guidance counselor, an enormous Cuban woman who lives in an office with 3 electric fans and no overhead lighting. There are always suspicious-looking students glowering around her like bodyguards. Going in to have forms signed is a little like discussing détente with a Banana Republic's dictator. "Viva la Revolution!" I shouted to him as he left, and half a dozen students looked at me quizzically. Kate threw her head back and laughed, though there's no way she could have gotten the joke. She has the other senior guidance counselor, a warm, friendly woman, sans fans. Kate, though, will never admit to not getting the joke. It's as if we would depose her. We clasped hands. "Be strong," she mock-whispered, and she had to go off. I wanted to hear firsthand about her conversation with Adam regarding those letters he had received from some breathless woman, but there wasn't time. Perhaps a grand opera breakfast tomorrow. What you'd like to hear about, of course, is the first face-to-face meeting with Adam. But, as with the difference between authority and authoritarianism, it's hard to talk about something that barely exists. As my bleary-eyed first take at my schedule indicated, I knew I'd see him in choir. He's a student conductor, which isn't just something to write down on his college applications. It's that Johnny Hand is a dim lush who wanders in and out of choir rehearsals and occasionally performs meandering show tunes from his either long-dead or entirely fictitious nightclub act. Adam handles all the music and teaches it to us. So the first meeting of choir consisted of the 100 or so members, 90 of whom are female, milling around the rehearsal hall, while Adam sat in a folding chair in conference with the other choir officers, trying to figure out what the hell to do. Johnny Hand was nowhere to be seen. He probably needed jump-starting somewhere. Adam saw me as I came in and gave me a half-wave and rolled his eyes. I sat down and wondered whether the eye-rolling meant he wished he could talk to me instead of talking to the chirpy president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer, or that he can't believe I had the courage to catch his eye. On the way out of choir, I passed the room where the band and orchestra rehearse. Rolling their eyes, Douglas Wilde, my ex, and his girlfriend, Lily Chanley, strolled out carrying their instrument cases. He is a violinist, she's a cellist, so there's no bitterness here because she's much better for Douglas. I'm practically tone-deaf, and anyway, I broke up with him. Douglas, as usual, was dressed to the hilt in an off-white linen suit, complete with pressed handkerchief and pocket watch. Dating him was a bit like being in an old movie. I hugged them both, each in turn. Douglas, the dear, didn't mind. It was, as they say in tabloids, an amicable parting. But Lily emitted such a glare that I was thankful that those were true instrument cases and not mafioso euphemisms. Had I written to these people during the summer, I wouldn't have to re-establish anything. Douglas had to rush off, after disentangling himself from Lily's smugly possessive goodbye kiss, but I stayed with her as she went to her locker. She handed over her computerized schedule card, and I discovered that we were about to have lunch together. I think it's great that you two are still together, I said as we sat down at one of the appropriate benches in the courtyard. Like homing pigeons, all the right people were in all the right places after summer break. Yes, me too, Lily said, relaxing a little bit. I could see her remembering that she was my friend and not my rival. I spied Natasha and waved for her to come over. She saw me and walked across the courtyard, accompanied by, I swear I could hear it, the clatter of male jaws dropping to asphalt. She had taken off her black leather jacket as the day got hotter and was wearing a translucent tank top that made the following fashion statement. Here are my nipples. That may sound bitterly envious, but that's only because I am. Same shit, different year, she said by way of greeting. She grasped Lily's well-combed head and kissed both cheeks. Tonight I get to make flashcards of the periodic chart. How's a scrumptious Jim Carr? I haven't had him yet. Well, give yourself time, she said, taking out a blood-red metallic lunchbox decorated with lacquered photographs of her idol, Marlene Dietrich. Where did she find these things? It's only the first day. Oh, how was choir? Lily looked up from her apple. What's in choir? Flan's current flame, Natasha whispered. Lily looked relieved, and I was thankful that Natasha let her know that I wasn't after Douglas. Who? Have you been dating someone this summer? She spent all summer in Europe, Natasha said, opening her lunchbox. Inside were 12 large shrimp in a bag filled with ice, and a small container of cocktail sauce. Not that anybody received as much as a postcard. Natasha and Lily turned to me and tut-tutted in unison. Why hadn't I sent postcards to them instead? Lily took another bite of apple. So, if Flannery isn't seeing someone, how can she have a current flame? Only Lily would want to get the terminology straight before finding out who the mystery man is. The candle, Natasha said, shrimp between teeth, is not yet burning at both ends. He doesn't know yet. Lily nodded sagely. She was ready. Who is he? I sighed. This part was always a little embarrassing. Adam State. Adam State? She screeched, and the apple dropped out of her hands and rolled into the middle of the courtyard. Everybody was quiet and stared at it. Natasha, of course, broke the silence. To the fairest! She cried, and people laughed and went back to their lunches. Though I'm sure nobody but us understood the Homeric reference, everyone understood Natasha doing something crazy. Having a crush on Adam State is like having a crush on Moses, Lily said, matter-of-factly. He's too busy doing his own thing to notice you. The 10 Commandments, Moses had a lover, Natasha said, absently. The 10 Commandments is not a documentary, Natasha, Lily said, and looked me over like a talent scout examining a piece of meat. Flannery, I wouldn't bet on his candle getting lit. She took her napkin from her lunch bag and began to clean her tortoise-shell glasses. I heard he just broke up with somebody, Natasha said, fluttering her hands in a gesture that indicated that she may have heard this from the wind. I tried to sound worldly and confident. He is the only appropriate person for me to like, I said, and Natasha and Lily exchanged a look. Natasha said nothing and finished her shrimp, and Lily put her glasses back on. I watched her hands as they absent-mindedly practiced cello fingerings at her side. Lily will probably attend a conservatory next year. I think she lost some weight over the summer. What was that look about? Did someone have a crush on me? The sun glinted on the apple, but the gods didn't seem interested today. Maybe they had to cover their books. I'd better stop all this description now because I'm in civics and my teacher, Gladys Tall, who lives up to her name, is getting suspicious. I couldn't possibly be taking this many notes on her lecture because the notes would have to look like this. Cover your book. Cover your book. Cover your book.